My fiancé was texting his ex, telling her he would imagine marrying her, so I left him at the altar, with a photo of his ex, so his dream could come true. I know some people reading this will immediately jump to call me dramatic or rude, but please, the idiot I was about to marry was fantasizing about marrying his ex. What kind of doormat would go through with that anyway? My ex, who I'll call Brandon, 26, and I had been together for over 3 years, and we got engaged 6 months ago. I know the wedding was a bit rushed, but that was because my ex didn't want to wait a whole year to marry me. I used to think he was just desperate to marry me out of love, that he couldn't wait because he cared that much. I was such a fool, because I never realized none of this was actually about me. I'm sorry, but I'm going to vent a lot here. My family and friends know the basics of what happened and understand why I left my ex at the altar. But I can't really unpack every single feeling and emotion with them. Not everyone in my life knows all the details of what I've been going through. I was deeply in love with my ex. I'd been eagerly looking forward to the wedding for almost 6 months and gave it my all to make sure everything would be perfect. Brandon said he was busy with work and didn't care much about wedding stuff, so I could do whatever I wanted. I tried to get his opinion, but he always said he had no idea about those kinds of things, so asking him was pointless. Since our engagement, I'd had this persistent feeling that my fiancé was becoming distant from me. At first, I thought it was just work stress. But then I began to sense there was a real gap growing between us. We rarely went on dates anymore, and we barely spent any quality time together at home. Whenever I tried to plan something special or asked him out, there was always an excuse why that day didn't work. Eventually, I got frustrated and told Brandon directly that I felt like we were drifting apart. He gaslighted me, insisting his job and my wedding planning were keeping us busy, and that everything would be fine once the wedding was over and his workload slowed down. Instead of telling me he didn't want to marry me, he chose to lie. And for the record, I worked too, but from home, so I had more time. I also had a good amount of savings that I was putting toward the wedding, while he didn't have much saved and had to work overtime to pay for his share. Before anyone calls me a bridezilla, let me clarify, we were supposed to have a small, intimate wedding with minimal decoration, modest costs, and zero luxury. Brandon has always been bad with money and made a lot of poor financial decisions in the past, so he didn't have much to contribute, and he couldn't take on too many extra hours either. So we agreed to keep it simple. I was happy to marry him, I didn't need anything big or fancy. I would have even been fine with a courthouse wedding, or a longer engagement so he could save more. But he refused. He told me he'd work overtime and bring in the money himself. So, a small church wedding with a simple reception on the church lawn was all we'd have, simple and sweet. At the time, I never imagined I'd end up leaving Brandon at the altar on what was supposed to be our special day. Then again, it was never our special day in his mind, because he was imagining someone else as the bride. I wish I were joking, but I'm not. A week before the wedding, I got a random Facebook message from Brandon's ex-girlfriend, Kelly, 26. I knew who she was by name, I'd never met her or anything, because I'd been told they no longer had any contact. Kelly messaged me and said there was something I needed to know about Brandon. She told me he had been sending her inappropriate messages and disrespecting our relationship. I'm ashamed to admit that I wouldn't have believed her if she hadn't sent proof. Kelly said she knew I'd want evidence, so she attached screenshots of her Instagram messages with Brandon. Those messages went back quite a while. Kelly hadn't bothered to respond more than once, most of them were just Brandon sending her random texts on random days, telling her he missed her and still had feelings for her. The messages started when Kelly got engaged. After a while, she got fed up and told him she was going to block him, that he should focus on his own relationship instead of harassing her. But Brandon didn't stop. What completely broke me was seeing what he said about our wedding. Brandon told Kelly that he would imagine her instead of me on our wedding day. He told her he still remembered every detail of the wedding they had once planned together, and that he had never shared any of that with me, because those memories were only for Kelly. So the reason Brandon never gave any opinions about the wedding was simply because he wanted his wedding dreams to come true, just not with me, but with her. I can't even get into the details of those messages because it's humiliating for me to even think about them. I was such a fool. At first, I thought maybe Kelly was a toxic ex who had faked the screenshots and messages to break us up and get him back, but I wasn't that much of a fool not to check Brandon's phone myself. He hadn't even bothered to delete the messages. Maybe you could explain it if Kelly had hacked his account, but I wasn't that paranoid. That day, I left the house and stayed at my maid of honor's place, my best friend, Mira. I left Brandon a message saying that Mira wasn't feeling well and had asked me to stay the night because she didn't want to be alone. Brandon believed the lie. I spent the next 3 days there, using the same excuse, and he never once checked on me or asked when I'd be back. That's how disconnected he was. Maybe he'd never loved me at all, and I'm becoming more and more certain of that. I was pretty depressed for those 3 days, I won't lie. But eventually, I made a decision. It was clear to me the wedding wasn't going to happen, or rather, I wasn't going to marry him. I simply couldn't marry someone who was going to imagine his ex in my place. Canceling the wedding would have been the logical thing to do, if I were some kind-hearted being who believes karma will punish people who do wrong. I don't believe in that nonsense. I wanted my own revenge. So instead of confronting Brandon and calling everything off, I decided to wait for things to play out, and leave him at the altar. I had spent 6 months arranging everything, and I didn't want it all to go to waste. Canceling things wouldn't have helped anyway, it was too late for refunds. So I decided to redirect all those resources into something productive, my revenge. I went back home and pretended to be normal. Meanwhile, I told my family and close friends what Brandon had done. I also made them swear to keep it secret. Not everyone agreed with what I planned to do, but none of them told Brandon or his family anything. I also started packing my important stuff little by little and sent it over to Myra's house without Brandon noticing. That wasn't hard, he was completely checked out. The day before the wedding, I went to stay at Myra's as we had planned. I asked my other bridesmaids to go to the church early the next morning and leave a life-sized cardboard cutout of Kelly at the altar, a nearly full-scale print that wasn't cheap at all since it was last minute. My bridesmaids are the best, I told them what I wanted, and they did it. In my mind, I like to imagine them sneaking into the church dressed in camouflage or something. On the wedding day, Mira was the only one who went to the venue. But by the time she arrived, everyone had already discovered the cutout, and Brandon had been calling me nonstop. He ran up to Mira asking what was going on, but she ignored him and simply told everyone that the wedding was cancelled, and that if they wanted to know why, they should ask Brandon. Then she left. No matter how much Brandon harassed her afterward, she never told him what really happened. Meanwhile, my bridesmaids and I had already driven to a beach town a few hours away so nobody could find me. Mira joined us later. We all spent 2 days there trying to lift my spirits, and it worked. But reality hit me when I came back home. Of course, I didn't go back to Brandon's house. My name wasn't on the lease anyway, even though I had been paying half the rent. The contract had never been updated because he'd been living there alone before I moved in, so I didn't have to inform the landlord about anything. I stayed at Myra's place, and she scared Brandon off when he tried to come see me. He's been sending me texts and voice messages begging me to talk to him, saying he has no idea why I left him at the altar, that there must have been some misunderstanding. He keeps insisting we should talk things through instead of me leaving him like that. His family and friends have also been leaving texts and voice notes, calling me cruel, rude, jealous, and vindictive, among other things. Some people are saying I need to get over whatever happened between Brandon and Kelly. The problem is, he was the cruel and disrespectful one, fantasizing about his ex and even writing to her after proposing to me. If he still had feelings for her, he could have been mature enough, the way everyone expects me to be, to admit it. But here's the thing, I don't want to be mature with someone who doesn't deserve it, who planned to carry on this emotional cheating, if you want to call it that, all the way through. He was going to let me marry him, for what? To have me as some kind of consolation prize? Now I'm sitting here planning to burn my wedding dress. No, I don't want to talk to Brandon, because that won't solve anything. And if he still has doubts about why I left him at the altar, which should be obvious by now, that's his problem, not mine. It's not my job to answer all his questions. He's not my problem anymore. Edit, his family doesn't know the real reasons either, because I never told them. I didn't want to ruin my little surprise. Only the people I trust know about this. And while some advised me not to go through with it, they're not exactly on Brandon's side right now either. My plan would have been better if, along with the photo, I'd told everyone the truth right then and there, at least during the big reveal. But honestly, I wasn't in the best state of mind to plan some elaborate revenge plot. Oh, and there's been a misunderstanding. Kelly and Brandon didn't have an affair. There was no cheating. Brandon just suddenly started messaging Kelly after our engagement. I had no idea what Kelly was doing in her life, because Brandon never talked about her. Even more disturbing details came out later. It turns out Brandon proposed to me just a few days after Kelly got engaged, and Kelly's wedding was scheduled just one day after mine. Everything Brandon did was because of Kelly. He kept messaging her, telling her he was doing his best to imagine marrying her instead of me. Kelly had tried to shut him down after the first time he texted her. But he was persistent. Kelly blocked him, but he used another account to message her. So Kelly decided she'd had enough. Please, don't leave hateful comments about Kelly. She's not my favorite person, but she's stuck in the middle of this and I can't blame her. She didn't provoke Brandon or have an affair with him. In those messages she clearly told him they were over and that he shouldn't be saying those things while she was in a serious relationship with someone else. Brandon was the one who kept harassing her. I have tons of evidence against him. I don't know whether Brandon messaged her after the wedding. Kelly is on her honeymoon right now, so I don't want to bother her asking about that, and I don't think it's relevant. Update 1. Not everyone agreed with my revenge. Some of those commenters said they'd support revenge when the cheater was a woman, which is what people wrote on other stories where the cheater was female. I had to check what kind of people they were after they called me many names and moderators had to step in. I even got very explicit private hate messages about me. Regarding Brandon, I'm not saying this was a full-blown physical affair, but it doesn't make it any less wrong that he lied to me for months and planned a wedding around his ex because he couldn't forget her. All that time he made me believe he loved me and planned a life with me, when really he was deceiving himself and using me to imagine Kelly as his partner. He deceived me and preserved an illusion for himself. He can no longer convince me he ever loved me. You probably feel the same way about how things look. Today one commenter asked how I could go 3 years without noticing anything. What can I say? I really had no way of knowing. He didn't start messaging Kelly until she posted photos of her engagement, about 6 months ago. Until then I thought he truly loved me, right up until he proposed. He seemed sincere then. His change happened the day of her engagement and mine. I didn't mention in my original post that Kelly and Brandon had been high school sweethearts who broke up in college and went their separate ways. Brandon told me they'd grown into different people when it stopped working. Kelly told me she was the one who left him because he pushed for an open relationship and didn't want to marry until he was 40. Brandon also had a habit of making bad money decisions and took more than $12,000 from Kelly over 6 months when she started her first job. He became controlling, even telling Kelly she should find another job because hers had too many male coworkers. Imagine the hypocrisy. The man who wanted an open relationship didn't want his girlfriend working around other men. Kelly said Brandon handled the breakup poorly. He expected her to crawl back when no one else would want her. The opposite happened. He came crawling back after a year because no one would date him when he was broke. Kelly tried to woo him back with love bombing and grand declarations that his feelings would never fade. She got fed up with the repeated harassment, changed her number, and moved away for work. Brandon and I met and started dating about 4 months later. Kelly shared all this background with me the day she sent the proof. We had a long conversation about everything. I left out some of it earlier because it didn't seem relevant. She's a good person, and I'll be forever indebted to her for exposing Brandon. I know I made it seem like I hated her, but I don't. It's complicated. She's part of a turbulent chapter of my life and also the person who saved me. So in short, I don't hate her. I'm grateful she helped me. What matters most is who I do hate, that stone-faced Brandon. Thank God I saw that side of him before we got married. Speaking of which, I haven't spoken to Brandon or anyone in his circle yet, but I have been thinking about setting the record straight. I considered adding everyone to a group chat and dumping all the evidence in there, but I decided not to. It's too much work, honestly. Instead, I spoke to Brandon's cousin, who I'm close to, and asked her to meet me. I need to know what version of events Brandon has been telling his family and friends so I can correct any lies he's spread. She'll be my tie to that family. I could try to clear things up with them, though I don't actually need them to like me. I even have a slight feeling that despite everything Brandon did, they'll defend him. Call me crazy, but that's the impression I get from them right now. Luckily, my family and friends are on my side. Some think what I did was harsh, but they're not saying I'm going to hell for putting a toxic person in his place. They're the kind of people who believe in karma, and I don't really buy that, although maybe a little. If karma were real, Kelly would probably have grounds for a harassment suit against him. So I see my revenge as a tiny slice of karma for me. Okay, maybe I do believe in a little karma after all. That brings me to a suggestion some people made about suing Brandon for the wedding expenses. I'm a few steps ahead. One of my bridesmaids is a lawyer and gave me a free consult. The point is this: if I sue Brandon, he could countersue, arguing he did have intentions to marry me. I could respond that my reasons for not marrying him were justified, and back that up with Kelly's testimony and the evidence. But he was persistent. Kelly blocked him, and he used another account to message her again. That's when Kelly decided enough was enough. Please, don't send hate toward Kelly. She's not my favorite person, but only because she ended up trapped in the middle of all this. I can't blame her. She didn't encourage Brandon or have an affair with him. In the messages, she clearly told him they were over and that he shouldn't be saying those things while in a serious relationship with someone else. Brandon was the one who kept harassing her. I have tons of proof against him. I don't know if he ever messaged Kelly again after the wedding. She's on her honeymoon right now, and I'm not about to bother her asking about that. Honestly, it's not even relevant anymore. Update 1. Not everyone here agreed with my revenge. Some of those profiles, by the way, were the same ones who supported revenge stories when the cheater was a woman. I had to check what kind of people they were after they called me names, and moderators had to step in, even getting explicit private hate messages toward me. As for Brandon, I'm not saying this was a full-blown affair, but it doesn't make it any less awful that he lied to me for months and planned a wedding around his ex because he couldn't get over her. The whole time, he made me believe he loved me and wanted to spend the rest of his life with me, but really, he was just lying to himself and using me to imagine Kelly as his bride. He deceived me and kept up an illusion. He'll never convince me he loved me. Someone in the comments asked how I could go 3 years without realizing anything. Honestly, I had no way to know. He didn't start messaging Kelly until she announced her engagement, about 6 months ago. Up until then, I truly thought he loved me. He seemed genuine even the day he proposed. His change happened the day she got engaged, and the day he proposed to me. I didn't mention earlier that Kelly and Brandon were high school sweethearts. They broke up in college and went their separate ways. Brandon told me they'd just grown apart and changed as people. Kelly, on the other hand, told me she was the one who dumped him because he was pushing for an open relationship and said he didn't want to get married until they were 40. Brandon also had a habit of making terrible financial decisions. He'd taken more than $12,000 from Kelly over 6 months when she started her first job. He also became controlling, telling her she should find a new job because her workplace had too many male coworkers. Imagine the hypocrisy. The guy who wanted an open relationship didn't want his girlfriend working around men. Kelly said that after the breakup, Brandon told her she'd come crawling back once nobody else would want her. The opposite happened. He came crawling back a year later, broke and alone. He tried love bombing her, saying his feelings had never gone away. Kelly finally got sick of the constant harassment, changed her number, and moved for work. Brandon and I met about 4 months after that. Kelly shared all of this with me the day she sent me the screenshots. We had a long talk. I left that out before because it didn't seem relevant, but she's honestly a good person, and I'll always be grateful she exposed him. I know I made it sound like I hated her, but I don't. It's weird, she's both the reason my life fell apart and the person who saved me from a disaster. So no, I don't hate her. I'm grateful she saved me. And as for who I do hate, that emotionless Brandon. Thank God I saw that side of him before I married him. Speaking of which, I still haven't spoken to Brandon or anyone else yet, but I've been thinking about setting the record straight. I thought about creating a group chat and dropping all the evidence, but honestly, that's too much work. Instead, I talked to Brandon's cousin, Gina, who's 23 and someone I'm close with. I asked her to meet me because I wanted to know what version of the story Brandon's been telling his family and friends, and to correct it if he's been spreading lies. She'll be my link to that family. I could try to explain things myself, but it's not like I need them to like me anyway. I have this feeling, call me crazy, that despite everything he did, they're still defending him. Luckily, my family and friends are on my side. Some think what I did was harsh, but they're not condemning me for putting someone as vile as Brandon in his place. They're just the kind of people who believe in no drama, no revenge and karma. And you all know I don't really believe in karma, though maybe I do, a little. If karma existed, Kelly would have a harassment lawsuit against him right now. So my revenge? I consider it a small dose of karma I helped deliver. That brings me to a suggestion some of you made, suing Brandon for the wedding money. I'm already ahead of you. One of my bridesmaids is a lawyer and gave me a free consultation. Here's the thing, if I sue Brandon, he could countersue, claiming he did intend to marry me. I could argue that my reasons for leaving him were justified, supported by the proof in Kelly's testimony. But the most likely outcome? We'd end up settling, and the only winners would be the lawyers and their hourly fees. At this point, I'd rather lose the wedding money, which, thankfully, wasn't much since it was a small event, than lose more money to lawyers. I just wanted to say thank you all for your support. I'll post another update once I talk to Gina, in case you want to know how that goes. Update 2. Since some of you asked for an update, here I am again. This won't be long, but I'll be precise. You were right, Brandon has been spreading lies about why there was a cardboard cutout of Kelly at the altar and why I left him there. I met with his cousin, Gina, who told me exactly what Brandon had told everyone when they asked. Apparently, Brandon told his family and friends that I had always been jealous of Kelly, that I was obsessed with her because their relationship had lasted longer than ours. He made up stories about how my insecurities made me suspicious and controlling, and that Kelly had actually stayed in touch with him, but he had to end it because I gave him an ultimatum. He invented a bunch of other garbage lies to make himself look like the victim and paint me as the selfish, cruel girl who couldn't control her jealousy. I admit, whatever leftover heartbreak I had for him turned into pure rage after hearing what he said. He had no remorse throwing me under the bus just to make himself look like the victim. I couldn't believe he still had the nerve to beg me to talk to him after that. This man doesn't have a single gram of shame in his body. I made sure Gina knew the truth. I showed her the screenshots and messages from Kelly. She was furious on my behalf, and also angry that Brandon had lied to her and everyone else. She swore she'd spread the word and share the screenshots so I wouldn't have to do it myself. Honestly, I don't even care anymore. Like I said, I don't care what Brandon's family thinks, except for Gina. Everyone else can have satanic dance rituals with my photo in the middle for all I care. In fact, I'd love pictures and videos of that just to laugh at them. Gina's a genuinely good friend, even though she's younger than me. We'll stay in touch no matter what. Kelly also reached out to me because she was worried and wanted to make sure I was okay. I honestly don't know why my ex was dumb enough to lose her in the first place. I kind of want to marry her myself at this point. Maybe I should start harassing her like Brandon did, that seems to work, right? Kidding. She's a great woman, and I'm glad she's happy. If anyone deserves a happy life, it's her. And if anyone deserves to never find happiness with anyone again, it's Brandon. Update 3. Hi again, I'm morally obligated by the gossip code of this subreddit to share this update, because I have juicy news for you all. Many of you were upset that my ex seemed to get off too easily. I thought leaving him humiliated on his wedding day was punishment enough, but wow, Karma had other plans. Yeah, Karma and I are apparently on good terms now. Remember how Brandon spread lies about me, saying I was insecure and jealous of Kelly, which is why I did what I did. Gina did her part and made sure everyone knew the truth. If you're confused or forgot who Gina is, she's his cousin I'm close with. When I met with her and told her about Brandon's emotional cheating, she took matters into her own hands. She literally called everyone and told them the truth. The screenshots were shared in group chats and DMs. She made sure every family member knew exactly what he'd done. She even reached out to his friends and told them too. Apparently, some of them already knew why I'd left him, those were the ones who didn't send me hateful messages. But the friend group had already started fighting, some supported Brandon, others saw it as enabling cheating. Brandon ended up losing a few good friends because of his actions. But the worst blow came from his own family. I had no idea cheating was such a sensitive topic for them. Maybe that's why Brandon lied, he knew they'd tear him apart if they found out he'd tried to cheat. I won't go into too many details, but it has to do with an aunt who took her own life because of her husband's infidelity. It's tragic and heartbreaking. No wonder Brandon rarely spoke about her, maybe it was guilt, or maybe he just didn't care enough to share. He'd been texting me nonstop for a while, begging for a chance to talk, saying I overreacted and that he hadn't actually cheated. Then he switched tactics, started accusing me of ruining his life. He really should have thought things through, but clearly, thinking isn't his strength. Kelly apparently didn't learn her lesson either, because me canceling the wedding only made Brandon more determined to win her back. He was waiting for her to return from her honeymoon, he still had mutual friends with her, so he knew exactly when she'd be home. Brandon had the audacity to show up at her house and literally beg her to run away with him. Kelly was there with her husband, and they were both horrified. Things escalated when Brandon refused to leave and ended up getting into a fight with Kelly's husband. So Brandon has already spent a few days behind bars. Nobody was willing to bail him out. Kelly started identifying and cutting off the mutual friends who kept feeding Brandon details about her. In the end, everyone decided to stay out of the drama once the police got involved. So my ex, now broke, couldn't afford to pay his bail, and his family turned their backs on him too after seeing his behavior and how completely unhinged he'd become. They told him they didn't want anything to do with him until he got proper help and tried to be a better person. They even reached out to me and apologized for the things they'd said before. Brandon's grandmother sent a check through Gina when she and I met for lunch. She also wrote me a letter basically saying she wanted me to keep the money as compensation for what I lost in the wedding. I was so shocked that it completely threw me off. Call me whatever you want, but I kept the money. I thought about returning it, but the grandmother mentioned it came out of Brandon's inheritance, so I just held on to it. After all, the wedding never would have happened if he hadn't been so insistent that we get married early. I learned a very valuable life lesson from all this, and I'm genuinely grateful that I saw my ex's frankly psychotic side before actually marrying him. I have no idea how he managed to hide that part of himself so well. I guess I really need therapy to figure out whether I missed red flags or just didn't know how to recognize them. Either way, I'm booking a session as soon as possible so I never go through something like this again. Some of you were really worried about me, and you were right to be. Something this big takes a real emotional toll on a person, and yes, it has taken one on me. I feel completely drained, but at the same time, I'm thanking every deity out there for saving me at the right moment. I've accepted that I need help, and I've decided to start therapy. I think it'll help me heal and move past all this for good. Edit. You want more details about the fight between Kelly's husband and Brandon? I'll call him Carlos, it just feels right, and honestly, that's how I picture him in my head. I don't know him, and I've never seen a photo of him, but my brain works that way. Brandon was at their door, literally talking to Kelly and acting like Carlos didn't exist. Carlos asked him to leave because neither of them wanted anything to do with him. Brandon said it was normal for Carlos to be scared that Kelly might choose him instead, and that's why he didn't want him there. But Kelly told him she didn't want him, that he disgusted her, just thinking about being with a man who had disrespected both her and me. That indirect comment, as Brandon took it, didn't sit well with him. He shoved Carlos and asked what his problem was. The problem was that Carlos had been holding back. But after the shove, he showed Brandon exactly what his problem was, both his fists. I don't know if it went exactly like that, but I do know Carlos and Brandon exchanged blows, which led to Brandon's arrest. From what I know now, his bail has since been paid, maybe by a friend. Gina told me his family definitely didn't pay it, unless there's a mole among them. Actually, I have more to tell, but out of respect for the person who asked me to keep quiet, I couldn't say anything, until now. It's even juicier than all this, which is why I couldn't resist writing. But until I got the green light, I had to stay silent. That person knows I post here, so I couldn't risk revealing anything. Update 4. Okay, I've got the green light to tell you what I was hiding. Some of you guessed it in the comments, and you were right. When I said I couldn't talk about it, I really couldn't. But now I can. Brandon was sued by Kelly. She asked me not to say anything before because it was an ongoing legal process, and she didn't know how posting about it might affect things. You never know who reads these stories, maybe even Brandon himself. Although after Carlos's punches, a name Kelly now finds hilarious, by the way, reading might be a little hard for him. Just kidding. But Carlos did want me to tell you all that they were good punches. After Brandon's arrest, charges were filed. That alone wasn't that interesting. The trial ended with a minor fine, and whoever paid his bail lost the money. After getting out, Brandon went full-on stalker mode on Kelly, flowers at her workplace, a teddy bear with a hidden camera, which they discovered when Kelly gave it to a co-worker's kid, and ransom note-style letters with cut-out letters claiming they were from her husband's supposed mistress. He even sent fake chat messages through a friend, probably the same one who lost the bail money, to Carlos, trying to make it look like Kelly was cheating. It was a total disaster. Some of it happened before my previous edit, and some after, which is why I couldn't mention the lawsuit then. In a way, it worked out, because Brandon's increased harassment only made Kelly's case stronger. He then broke his bail conditions trying to flee and skipped one of his court hearings because he went to Kelly's house again. As a result, he was sentenced to 6 months in prison for harassment, which he's still serving, though not for much longer. For the fight with Carlos, he only got a fine, but he lost the harassment and assault lawsuit for an amount Kelly didn't disclose to me. He also lost his job because he's in prison. And, almost forgot, his family still isn't speaking to him. I used to be a skeptic about karma, but what's happened to Brandon makes my revenge look like a high school prank in comparison. All my respect goes to Kelly and Carlos. Hats off to them, truly.